Hi everyone, my name is Taylor and I chose to do a presentation regarding business continuity and the litigation that insurers are facing during the COVID-19 pandemic. So as we know, a lot of non-essential businesses have been shut down due to the pandemic and are unfortunately losing revenue substantially because of their shutdowns. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how insurers are responding to that. So as we've learned in our risk management courses, property policies include a business interruption endorsement. And the problem with this in the COVID-19 pandemic is that the loss of business interruption income has to be triggered by a direct property loss. And unfortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic is not a direct property loss unless it's physically on the surfaces inside of the facility. So like if it was a restaurant and the virus was on the table and the insured could prove that the virus was, on the table, on the surface, that would count as a property loss. But unfortunately, that is very hard to prove and not the case for a lot of businesses. So, but they're still losing revenue and they still feel like they need this coverage. So a lot of insureds are finding this loophole in their policies, and in the policies it states that closure to a business by a civil authority is a covered loss. But it depends on the very, very specific wording in your policy. So we're seeing a lot of insurers having to cover this because of the specific wording in their policy, and a lot of insurers not having to cover this because of the specific wording in their policy. So in this particular policy, which is a quote I got from Marsh's website, coverage is provided to the insured for the actual loss sustained by the insured during the length of time when access to such described premises is specifically prohibited by order of civil authority as a direct result of damage as insured against in the policy. So this particular policy is saying that if the business closes due to a civil authority, it has to be because there was a property damage or a damage covered in the property policy. So unfortunately, if a business closed not due to the coronavirus specifically being on the surface, it wouldn't be covered in this specific policy, but insurers with vague wording in their policies in this exclusion could face losses. And as we know, when there is vague wording in a contract, it usually favors the person who didn't draft the contract, so in that case, the insured. And so in a court of law, if there is vague wording in the policy, it would favor the insured. So insurers are seeing a little bit of that, but they obviously don't want to pay for the losses because who would want to do that? So a group of insurance companies came together because they recognized this was a huge problem, and businesses are very, very upset about it, so they wanted to do something for their insureds, but they don't want to pay out the losses. So they're coming together and they called for a federal business continuity fund. They wrote a letter to the Trump administration. The Trump administration's opinion on it, the Trump administration seems to think that the insurance companies should be responsible for paying the losses, even though it is specifically excluded in a lot of the policies. He believes that the insureds have been paying thousands of dollars in premiums just to find out that their business interruption is not covered, and he believes that the insurers should do something about it. But the insurers argue and say that if the insurers were forced to pay out all of these claims themselves, that there would be they would have to go insolvent and there would be economic turmoil. So this is a very sensitive negotiation, probably not one that's going to be solved anytime soon, but that's just the opinion of each side. So, and insurers also say this is going to be faster and easier way to distribute the benefits to businesses is to establish the federal fund. It would be backed by the federal government and then operated by a special administrator that's given authority to distribute the benefits. So like I said, that's still under negotiation, so something we're going to see in the next month or so. But in the meantime, at least the CARES Act has provided that states establish small business relief funds for companies with 50 or fewer employees, and those businesses can apply for a grant. And the grant would be $10,000 to most businesses. So I think that's very good that they're taking care of the little guy first. But it is still a huge problem that these businesses are losing revenue. And I'm not sure that the leaders necessarily know which way is the best way to go yet. And it is hard to know that because our government has already established several funds to help us and businesses out during the pandemic. So it's very hard to know which way to go, but everyone just has to be hopeful that they will figure out what is the best thing to do. Something else that's going to come out of this is they're already proposing the Pandemic Risk Insurance Act called for by the U.S. Congress. It's been the very, very early stages, so it's not quite clear whether this will help during the current pandemic, but basically it would be a federal loss sharing program for insurance claims resulting from pandemics or epidemics like COVID-19. And it would be to trigger the federal funding, the losses must exceed a specific amount, which hasn't been determined yet. And the insurer would also have to prove that they have paid losses up to that specific amount. There's also talk about combining PREA and TRIA into one, which would be interesting. But like I said, it's in the very early stages. So it's definitely something we're going to be looking at in the future. But I think everyone in the government's main focus is on the immediate problem of eliminating the spread of the virus. And it is a very huge problem that businesses are shutting down and not able to pay their employees. But I believe that everyone is focused first on eliminating the virus. So thank you so much for listening to my presentation. Here are my works cited, and I hope you all stay safe and have a great evening.